Hello Sangha, today is Thursday, February 1st, 2018, first Abbots Address in a while, and I'm happy to be getting these together again. I had some technical troubles and schedule stuff and all kinds of things, but here we are. And we put out a survey in the Temple Facebook group and through the email lists and whatever to see what kind of topics people were interested in. Turns out the most important one for people seems to be, it's a tied thing here, overview of crucial Buddhist history and texts. So, you seek a scholarly knowledge, do you? Okay, fine, I can go there with you. It's actually quite useful to have a sense of the Buddhist trajectory. When we enter into training, we enter specifically into the Zen matrix of encountering the Dharma, and that's fantastic. That's awesome, and it's actually very useful to have some sense of how the Zen tradition fits, into the wider span of Buddhist thought and experience, which is actually quite rich and quite diverse. And then also to see how that experience manifests in different cultures, including very much our own. I mean, the encounter of Buddhism in the West, it's a very interesting study, and honestly, we're all playing a very real part in the unfolding of that in this community here, and so we're a part of it, So I thought about, what would be some good resources. I mean, I don't really feel like what I want to do in the Abbots Address is to sit here and put out a scholarly lecture series when they're ready to hand, frankly. These things exist. So here's the easy go-to. Okay, this is the easy go-to. This is I hope people know about this group called the Teaching Company. If you can see that, or if it's backwards, I don't know. It's called the Teaching Company, and it's called the Great Courses, and they have a really, really fine overview called Buddhism. Plain and simple, right? Professor Eckel is the guy. There he is. Little Eckel there, nice guy. And he does a really good job, in my opinion. This is a good two-part series. I think this works well as a CD or as an audio download. You can get it as a video, I suppose, if you want. And it really goes through in a flatly scholarly way. I mean, it's just straight up scholarship. This is the history. This is what we understand. This is what this is the state of modern scholarship. And he goes through the founding myths and traditions all the way through the Dharma's development, all the way up into Zen and Buddhism in America. So it's got 24 lectures. Each of them are pretty insightful. I'm fond of Eckel's work. I think he does a really good job with storytelling and kind of bringing the stuff to life. And then significantly, if you get the little booklet that comes along with it, that right now is on loan to Postulant Yugen, you owe me that booklet, but it has an amazing bibliography in there. So if there's a particular period or era that's kind of catching your fancy, you can pull the threads by looking at Eckel's written summary of the class and kind of see what bibliography he's got cooking, which is quite good. Okay, so if you want just one shot, one cool thing to do, the Great Courses, Buddhism, it's a nice solid overview. And in fact, I think it would be lovely to have this as a resource in the Sangha library. So I'll see what I can do about securing a copy for us and having it there. Or maybe if somebody wants to donate a copy and put them there, that would be great. So it's the Teaching Company. I'm sure you can search it online and find them. So there's your go-to one-stop shop. Okay, it's a good deal. If you want to pull the threads, the bibliography that are in these things are very well done. Next, this one is a book, and this is a heavy tome. Okay, it's a weighty tome, this one, and it's called A Survey of Buddhism. Okay, and its doctrines, methods through the ages. Sanghaharishta. This is the author's name. Okay, boy, that looks backwards. Oh well, there it is. This is the one that I read, and I think this came out. Let me look and see when this one came out. Yeah, 57. Okay, so its first edition is in 1957. I think I got my copy in what? 98. Okay, so this is a heavier read. It's a thicker look than maybe what Eckel presents, and it goes into it drills down a little bit deeper. Okay, now this is not a light thing to kind of read. This is pretty heavy duty. But if you want something that gives a little bit more drilling in there, this is a really good overview of some of the basic philosophy, the doctrines, and as they've evolved through time. Okay, and again, all of this is about those who seek scholarly context in history. It's really quite good. It's a slog, to be fair about it, but it's a good one and it's worthy. All right. Now, this is by Rick Fields. It's called How the Swans Came to the Lake. This is a specific topic. This is talking about a narrative history of Buddhism in America. Okay, so Eckel here, he gives us, one solid lecture of 24 on Buddhism in America. So this is clearly a nice, gentle overview kind of thing. This is not going to really get into American Dharma as such. It's talking about the historical traditions and philosophies and practices and so on. This one is really all about the American experience in the, let's say, up to the 20th century. Okay, this thing was published in, I could guess, but yeah, so it's published in 81. Okay, so it's pretty current. It's not up to the moment, but it's pretty solid. This will go into things like the Beats, Allen Ginsberg, and it'll talk about how the first teachers came over, the relationship of the immigrant communities that brought the Buddhism with them, its encounter with native Western folks, what have you, and it's a really good overview of Buddhism in America. Okay. Now, if one of these is tickling your fancy, you can just go right for this one if this is the one you want. You don't have to do these in any kind of order to speak of. This is easier to read, for what it's worth. It's much more of a sort of a general light history kind of thing, but it does get into some pretty interesting stuff about the Second War and how it relates and that kind of thing. So, How the Swans Came to the Lake, a narrative history of Buddhism in America up to the late part of the 20th century. I don't have my copy here. James Ford's book, Zen Master Who, is a really good one. It talks specifically about the Zen tradition in the American experience. And it too, it's got what, a decade or so on it anyway. I mean, it's not completely up to the instant, but it gives a really good overview of the story of Zen specifically in American culture and history, and how these different lineages are and how they relate and everything. It's amazing that Hiroshi took the time to actually write all that stuff down. He has a pretty solid overview of these things. Finally, I'm going to hold up this one, and some people might think this is funny that I would hold this up. This is an old classic. It's called Zen and Japanese Culture by none other than Daizet Suzuki. Okay, and so the original meat of this was written in 1938, 32. Let me check. We must be accurate, 38 or 32? Well, the revision was in 1970, but the actual first book was in 38. I was right. Ha. Okay, 1938, and then he revised it, I think, in actually 58. Now this is about Zen and Japanese culture. Okay, so it's talking about, it's a little bit of a study on how Japanese culture has been influenced by Zen. So he talks about things like swordsmanship, he talks about things like tea ceremony, love of nature, etc. And it's very interesting to get some insight into what is Japanese culture, what is Zen, how do they relate, particularly as our lineage came through Japan and came to America. And so there's noticeable, touches of Japanese culture along with Chinese and Indian, and for that matter, a smattering of Tibetan in the way we practice. But this is a really good study on Zen and its impact on Japanese culture. Now, here's the thing, okay? For every one person that asks me to recommend some books, I'm a complete book nerd. I'm reading all the time. This would be not uncommon for me to have, like, hanging out near the bedstand or whatever, and I will happily chew through 4 or 5 of those kind of at a time. I love it. I love reading. I love learning. I love studying. It's just, I dig it. Some people, it pushes the overwhelm button instantly. It's just like, oh God, I don't want to have to do that. And you totally don't have to do this, okay? The most important thing is not having the scholarly timeline kind of ready to hand. That will not help you, honestly, when it comes down to the great matter of your own life and death and your practice. The most important thing is your practice, your connection to the teachers, your connection to the Sangha, your presence, and being involved in the life of the community and your practice. That's home plate. The business of Zen is the business of awakening, okay? So that's home plate. And for the right person, for a person who feels an affinity with it, this kind of stuff is fun. I mean, one takeaway, skip all the books, the takeaway is that a lot of people have put their entire life, or a good part of their life, energy into this project, into the Dharma, so that you and I and all of us have it, so that we actually can receive this Dharma, and now it's on us to maintain it and to further it and to pass it on, right? So I'm always in awe at the lineage of the ancestors, of all these great beings, named and unnamed, who put everything on the line for us to be able to have this practice, and it is inspiring to know about. So check these things out, see if they're useful. If it doesn't appeal, don't stress about it. If it does, these are some resources that I've integrated and have relied on and felt nourished by. Okay, thank you everybody.